What's up, everybody? Welcome back. Occupy Fantasy YouTube channel. I'm Brian Jester, co-founder here at Occupy Fantasy. We're here today with some NFL DFS picks, lineup advice, strategies for the Saturday two-gamer. It's a wild card weekend. A bunch of different types of slates to play this weekend. You have two-gamer, six-gamer, three-gamer, showdown, you name it. So I encourage you, first of all, to check out our daily plug at occupyfantasy.com. That's up Friday afternoon. Probably after you watch this video, it'll be posted. And it goes through every single game, different slates, different lineup strategies, rankings. Everything you need for the entire weekend is in one article. Links in the description below, so go check that out. In the meantime, I'll be here with Jack from dfsMagic doing a two-game video today. And then for the three-gamer on Sunday, we'll also have another show or another preview video. So be sure to stay tuned and subscribe to us to make sure you get notified when all those videos go live. Let's bring him in. Jack, dfsMagic. What's up, dude?
Hey Brian, how's it going, man? Once again, back for the short game slates with you. I think we're excited to talk about one that doesn't involve a bunch of people getting sick with COVID this time. So can more talk straight football, and looking forward to it.
Absolutely. We've had a bunch of these short slates over the past couple of weeks. And Jack, you got close in one of them, right?
I did. The last one, I was sitting second for a while in FanDuel. I ended out with I think fifth place and sixth place. Honestly, didn't play quite enough chaos. I had a couple of Chiefs in there, but the winning lineup, I think, didn't have any of the big three, Darrell, Kelsey, or Hill. So I didn't quite go that crazy. But yeah, it was a good run, and it was another reminder for the strategy that we put out every time, which is game stack, game stack, game stack.
Yeah, it's funny because that day, that was the Kansas City game and the two-gamer, and you and I both said that before the game started that, is it crazy to play zero Chiefs? Yeah, that's probably crazy. We probably have to do a min of two, even in the larger contests, and I think a min of one got there, so it was pretty nuts.
Yes, absolutely. So just a reminder that on these two gamers, it's just a very wide range of outcomes.
Yep, so let's jump into this two-gamer on Saturday. We have the Bengals and the Raiders in the early 4:30 game. Buffalo and New England meeting up for the third time this season in the 8:30 game. And Jack, two very different game environments. And that's probably where we have to start from a very high level, where in the Buffalo game, we're expecting temperatures right around zero, wind chills -10, -20 in some spots during the game. And while it won't be as bad as that wind game that we talked about and profited very heavily from earlier in the season between these two teams, this type of cold really does impact passing efficiency when it gets this cold. So we have a game that's relatively decent, 20 degrees, a little bit of wind in Cincinnati and Las Vegas, and just brutal temperatures in New England and Buffalo. So to me, that looks like a clear game environment that we want to stack. But again, it's only a two-game slate, so lots of things can happen.
Absolutely, and I think the game total is reflective of that, right? We have almost a, let's see, five-ish point difference in total between the early and late games. The Vegas Cincinnati games creeping up a teeny bit. New England Buffalo is more or less holding steady. A couple of sites have dropped it, so that is very supportive of what you're saying with the weather environment. And Brian, as we've seen, the field does not usually take weather into account very much, and I think we see that in particular with the quarterback ownership, right?
Yeah, so I actually have the quarterback ownership up right now, and it's relatively flat compared to some of these other slates we've talked about recently. Josh Allen we have projected for 35% on DraftKings, Joe Burrow 33%, Derek Carr 26%. So kind of a flat allocation between those three, and then Mac Jones checks in under 10%. This is pretty interesting to me where we can get both of those quarterbacks in the early game sub 33%. Josh Allen, obviously, with his legs. And I don't think, and we saw in the first game, the win game between these teams, they still passed, right? Whereas New England didn't pass at all. But curious to get your take on how you're planning on spreading out your quarterback ownership, given the fact that it is so flat.
Yeah, I think when the field is flat, it gives you more of an opportunity to take a stand on something. Whereas, at least for high risk, whereas if the field is kind of all in on one player, that's a time when you might want to spread out. So Brian, I'm kind of with your idea of the first game being the better game stack, and I'm probably leaning toward most of my exposure to Burrow and Carr. Again, it's pretty nice when you can get. We've seen Burrow just absolutely destroying slates lately. And yet he's in the better game environment against the weaker opponent, and he's not the highest owned quarterback on the slate. So I think right off the bat, that's a great place to start. And Carr is even cheaper if they're behind in a high game total environment. He could definitely get there too.
Yeah, because the thing is, right, if Burrow goes off, that means Chase and or Higgins are going off as well, maybe Tyler Boyd. And you could just play those guys and get the salary savings with Derek Carr and play some of his receivers, and you get a Derek Carr with Renfro and Waller or Zay Jones, whoever it may be, running back with those two of those studs from the Cincinnati side. And you end up with the same kind of lineup, which is nice to me. And as I was building lineups this morning, I've ended up creating a lot of different types of variations of Burrow plus cheap Raiders guys, Derek Carr plus the Bengals studs, all types of 4-2, 5-2, 4-3 type stacks. And it really gives you a lot of flexibility in what you do if you choose to stack that game heavily.
Yeah, Brian. And another thing we get, which is nice on in both sides of that game, is pretty predictable targetry, right? Like we know Chase and Higgins are getting the targets. Boyd to a lesser extent, and he's a good kind of player to add on to stacks. But those are the two guys, right? Like you said, if Burrow does well, at least one of them is going to do well, if not both. On the other side of the ball, especially with Waller back, I mean, it's Waller and Renfro. And then you've got those cheap complementary guys, Zay Jones, Deshaun Jackson, Tyler Boyd on the other side, Uzama. So you've really got pretty ideal players on both sides of the ball here to build those game stack lineups. And the running backs are pretty predictable too, right? Jacobs and Mixon are basically getting all the touches.
Yeah, exactly. So let's talk about running back ownership really quickly across the entire slate because we have pretty much the three guys are pretty heavily owned. Devin Singletary, who we've seen get a massive workload in the last month of the season, Joe Mixon, Josh Jacobs, all 50% or higher. The one that's so interesting to me is Damian Harris. If this game plays out like we think it will, right, there's no reason he doesn't get 15 plus touches. No reason he doesn't get goal line work like he has been. And he's the least owned of the starting running backs on the slate at 34%. So, again, if you're playing into this weather narrative, Damian Harris makes a ton of sense to me.
Yeah, Brian, I have FanDuel up. Damian is priced actually higher than Jacobs and Singletary at 7,500. He does check below Mixon. I assume if you have DraftKings up, do you know what does his price look like compared to the other guys?
Yeah, he's cheaper than those guys, which may tighten up a little bit. Whereas Singletary's 5,800, so obviously he's the best value of the group. Jacobs is 66, Damian's 64, and Joe Mixon's 71.
Okay, yeah. So I mean, I'm totally in agreement with you. I mean, we've seen Damian Harris have a huge game against Buffalo. I mean, it's very obvious. Kind of everything about that second game just screams that New England's going to run the ball 30 as many times as they can. Right? The temperatures. Buffalo is the highest pressuring defense. I think they're the number one DVOA pass defense, but they are, they're somewhat weak to the run, and New England can run on them. And why would they have Mac Jones throw the ball in that environment against that defense when they can just hand it off?
Yeah, exactly. So, all right, so we like the first game environment. That's the easy stacking game. So let's think about the Buffalo side for a second here. Assuming Buffalo doesn't change their strategy too much, right? They're gonna do what they're gonna do. Who do you like from that side? How do you plan on deploying? Let's just say you go with those two quarterbacks in the first game. What are you thinking about the Buffalo players to complement that first game stack?
Yeah, I'll again come back to the target funneling, right? I think you play Diggs with Allen probably every time. I mean, if I'm playing Allen, I'm going to play Diggs in every lineup. Certainly it can win to cheat off of him. I mean, I think a ton of people in the field are going to play, the Beasley, Sanders, Davis kind of guys and not play Diggs. But Diggs gets so many targets. He gets red zone targets. I don't know, Brian. Do you see any reason to play Allen in a game stack without Diggs?
The only way I could see that happening is if that first game kind of shoots off and we have, Higgins, Chase, Waller, Renfro, those types of guys do really well and have ceiling games. And Diggs has an okay game, 15, 20, 25-point game, but he gets outscored by those other guys, and Allen's legs gets him there to be the optimal quarterback. So I think there are ways, but it would have to be very specific rules in play as to who else is in your lineup if you chose to play Allen without Diggs.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think, you're bringing up a lineup construction that I imagine a lot of the field's going to play. They're going to play Bengals and Raiders studs, and then they're going to play Allen and some cheap guys in that game to make it work. I think one of the reasons we push for these correlated game stacks is it's pretty easy to construct your lineups. When you get into these situations where you're playing like three guys from each team, Brian, it's just really hard for us to build lineups and kind of cover all the outcomes there compared to all the things the field's going to do, right?
Exactly, 100%. That's exactly right, and that's why we want a game stack, even on these smaller slates and super stack. So speaking of that, DraftKings, FanDuel, how much of a stack are you considering for each game?
Well, I think you got to consider the almost some of the maximum ones you can do. I mean, I think you just brought up that you were looking at some 4x3 or 5x2s. I think that's definitely in play on this. Again, with I think with the cold weather environment and the probably run heavy nature of New England, the floor of that second game is incredibly low. So you easily could see 6, 7 players from that first game be optimal. I probably wouldn't even set a limit. And one of the nice things we have about the lineup builder is you can set minimum and maximum, so you can have a range that it can use in stacks. I'd be comfortable setting the maximums pretty high, and if it goes there for some lineups, just letting it happen.
Exactly, and I'm just bringing it up right now so people can see the rules if they don't have access to it. But you go min 3, max 5, min 1, max opponent 3, and just let the lineup builder do his thing, and now you're ending up with a ton of game stacks. So, all right, Jack, any other news, notes, lineup ideas we haven't talked about for this 2 game slate?
Yeah, why don't we spend a minute on tight end? Looking at ownership and just the names, it's pretty clear that it's Waller's going to be massive chalk. I mean, definitely over 50%. Easily can we have 66 at least on FanDuel. We've seen players on these other slates crack 70%. I don't know if he'll get that high just because he's a tight end, but um, how do you approach Darren Waller in this contest?
It's funny because I've read some preview articles about this game so far, and it's seemingly every article has mentioned that Waller went over 100 yards in their first matchup, and I think a lot of people are clinging to that. And again, I mean, he's definitely the best tight end on the slate for sure. But when you have all these other guys, and he's priced pretty affordably too, right? 5,700 on DraftKings is not prohibitive whatsoever. So I think it's pretty likely that he ends up in the optimal lineup. However, it would probably be a lineup construction standout that makes him not in the optimal, or maybe some crazy stuff happens, right? But I think Uzama we have as the highest rated in the model, and a big part of that is his $3,500 price tag on the favored team in that game. The other tight ends from the other game, Dawson Knox, Hunter Henry, are extremely touchdown dependent, and if that game is lower scoring, that's not going to be enough to get him into the optimal.
Yeah, I totally agree. I'm with you. I think you generally have to eat Waller. I don't think that's a guy you want to just arbitrarily take a game theory stand on and fade. Um,
Plenty of
but
other
yeah,
spots, plenty of other spots to do that on this slate for sure.
absolutely. And it gets back again to the game stacking idea. If Waller does well, who benefits, right? Carr, and probably Bengals players because if he's doing well, either the Bengals scored a bunch and forced the Raiders to throw, or the Raiders scored a bunch and Bengals are behind. So yeah, I'm with you. I think that's a spot to play. Would you consider playing Waller and Uzama in the same lineup? I know we always like to hate on double tight end, but it is a 2 game slate.
Yeah, we've talked about it before, and 2 gamers are a different beast, and you can play double tight end. I have no problem playing Uzama, especially at his price. I would set rules to make sure I don't have like Knox and Hunter Henry in the same lineup. The only time I would double tight end, I think, is if Waller is in the lineup, and probably only with Uzama.
Yeah, totally in agreement. Waller is basically a wide receiver production wise, right? So you're really just playing an extra wide receiver. So I'm with you. And again, playing it in the game stacking environment, I think, is another defensible reason to do it.
Absolutely. And again, small slates are very, very different. And this is definitely, again, if it's a main slate, we will try to talk you off the ledge of a double tight end, but not necessarily on a 2 game slate. So, all right. So that'll do it for this video. We appreciate you listening. As always, we'll be back. The 3 game slate video will be posted Saturday evening. So be on the lookout for that. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, can get notified when it's uploaded. Moose and I will be live tomorrow with a Q&A before the games start. And again, the daily plug is up, occupyfantasy.com for the weekend slate. Every game, every slate, lineup advice and strategies are in there. Make sure you're using the lineup builder by DFSMagic that Jack created. You see it on screen here, occupyfantasy.com/lineup builder. Invaluable for weekends like this. So for Jack, follow him at DFS_magic_. Follow me at Brian Jester FF. Follow us at Occupy Fantasy. Appreciate you listening, and good luck this wildcard weekend.